this creates a real key challenge for Australian policy making and the Australia reform agenda. And that was a challenge that was put down by German psychologist Ernst Henrik Weber. In 1834, he discovered what became Weber's law, and that is that people don't actually appreciate information without the context in which it exists. He was interested in weightlifters, and he was interested in particular in how much weight a person could actually observe when it gets added. So what he found is if the weight that someone can physically notice was dependent on the weight they're holding initially. So if you're holding 100 kilos in your hand, if I add a gram to that, you're not going to notice. But if you're not holding anything in your hand, your fingers can actually sense a gram. And so what it means is our physical senses for weight, what Weber found, were determined, like how good they were at assessing changes in their environment was based on what the environment was at that point in time. Now, what's been interesting to find out is that this theory holds true not just for physical weight, which Weber explored, but also for our capacity to sense light. We can sense a small change of light when it's dark, like the presence of a candle. But if I was to bring a candle in here, A, you'd think I'm stupid, but B, you wouldn't even notice the light it gave off. But from a dark room, you'd definitely notice it immediately how much extra light there is. The same holds true for sound. Our capacity to analyse sound is based on the amount of ambient sound in the environment. And surprisingly, the same is true for wealth. If I was to give you $100, that might make you feel better. It might make you feel as good, X better, if you will. If I was to make you feel 2 times X, I'd have to not give you $200. I'd probably have to give you $300 or $400, depending on your personal utility around money. But the reality is that as you make more money, you actually stop becoming just as happy for each additional dollar. This is a challenge for one of the wealthiest societies in the world when we're talking about how do we make difficult decisions, because people are loss averse. If I'm talking around Australia, the graph hasn't turned up well on this particular slide, but since Federation, like you and I, on GDP measure, which is a really rough one, we're around 650 times wealthier than every individual who lived at the Federation. Hands down, we're far better off. And that's a poor measure of quality of life. We now live a lot longer than ever before. We have higher quality of life. We have the capacity to travel like no one did then. We actually don't live in the same world as the people who founded this country. We live in one that's infinitely better, I believe. And the challenge is, how do you make difficult decisions when you're talking around, what ends up being a marginal change?